work-life harmony works. I am Rebecca, a member of the NUSS Human Resource Community of Practice. Before we start the event proper, I would like to remind all to put yourself on mute during the session so as to give our speakers and panelists the full focus. Please feel free to type your questions in the Q&A box, and if you wish, turn on the video and ask the question live to any of our speakers during the Q&A session at the end. So welcome again to tonight's event. I am very pleased to be the host and moderator for this evening. A little bit about me. I am one of the first few members of the HR Community of Practice when it was first set up back in early 2020. We are a group of HR practitioners coming together to learn and share on some of the key people issues we see in the market and in companies, one of which is hybrid working and work-life harmony, a very contemporary topic we are going to explore tonight. For this event, you will hear from our keynote speaker, flexible work arrangement options, and how to tap on these solutions to attract, retain, and engage our employees. This is then followed by a panel discussion as we invite prominent leaders from the market to share further insights into this topic. We will end the session with a Q&A from the audience, and hopefully we will all walk away with deeper understanding and fresh ideas on flexible work arrangements for the new norm. To kick us off, let's invite Ms. Sean Kwan Tai to say a few words. Kwan Tai is a familiar face to many of us in the HR community. At work, she is the HR director at a global logistics company with APAC remit. At NUSS, she was a member of the management committee since 2016 and currently the chair of Community of Practice subcommittee. Over to you, Kwan Tai, for a few words.
Thank you. We have a very interesting format. You see us in the conference format with the speakers. Thank you, Rebecca. As part of the NUSS continuous effort to promote the interests of members, the management committee in its July 2019 strategic planning meeting decided to form a task force to look into the possibility of establishing what we call industry or professional focus community of practice, where members of the similar interests and similar profession can come together to share as part of our professional, personal, and business development. So the Human Capital COP, in short, Community of Practice, was formed in June 2020. And Rebecca mentioned earlier that she was one of the first few members to have joined us. Now, under the chairmanship of Daniel Chia, the Human Capital COP have organized close to 10 webinars and workshops. And today is a good example. So I will hand it back to Rebecca and wishing all of us a meaningful and purposeful evening on the important subject of work-life harmony. I need it definitely, having worked from home for 18 to 24 months as of now. Back to you, Rebecca. Thank you.
Thank you, Kwan Tai. So this topic is most relevant to us personally and also to the companies who are looking to reinforce their work-life balance for their employees and flexible work arrangements. Let's welcome our keynote speaker. I would like to introduce Ms. Yeo Miu, Chief Success Officer of Carousel Private Limited, a company which provides services in consultancy, training, and coaching, and especially specializing in work-life matters, such as flexible work arrangement. Ms. Yeo is also the president of WeWAM, short for Women Empowered for Work and Mothering, a non-profit organization she founded in 2011 to empower mothers for work-life success. In 2012, she received Singapore's Work-Life Excellence Leadership Award from the Tripartite Committee on Work-Life Strategy for her work in various roles and organizations. Over to you, Ian, to take us through for your keynote.
Thank you, Rebecca, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let me just try and get the share screen on. I hope everyone can see it now. Is that all right? Good. Okay. Welcome to this session about work-life harmony. And I hope that after this session, you can truly be the change and make work-life harmony work. Rebecca, are we okay?
Sorry, Ian, I am seeing half your slides. Can we
You're
double
seeing
check
half
again?
my slide. Okay, let me do
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
here.
Same here. Yeah.
All right, let me do it again. Sorry.
No worries, try again.
Okay, let's try again. Are we better?
Yes.
Yes.
All
Got it.
right, good.
Oh, good.
Thank you. So I hope that at the end of this session, you will be the change and make work-life harmony work for you as well as your team members. So this is a 20 minutes presentation, and I normally take 4 hours to do this. So you can imagine that there's going to be some quick summary. Some points will not be covered, but if you have any question, do ask those questions when we're during the panel discussion. So I believe that in this room, we have a variety, a diversity of people. We may have a young father who wants to work, but at the same time want to be a good father. We may have a lady who has just seen how the child has performed for P5 and is thinking of taking a break for PSLE. And of course, in Singapore's aging population, we do have people who may be at this point in time be concerned about things like chronic illness. So I'm pretty sure that in this room, we have a multi-generational audience, just as we have a multi-generational workforce right in the workplace right now, with people who are millennials, Gen Y, X, and as well as baby boomers. So we observe various situations, especially with the COVID situation. We see that many people are working from home, and there's this always on culture. And at the same time, many people may be on globalization jobs where they are really on 24/7 sometimes. And for this HR group of people, you know the war for talent. Another observation that is made about the workforce trend is that there are more women in the workforce, and we do have an aging workforce as we raise the retirement age and re-employment age. So we also see that there are different work styles and values of different generations we saw, and family structure are changing, and there's also different views of careers. So I'm going to take you back to the basic of what is work-life balance. In a sense, work-life balance often gives the impression that it's about 50% work and 50% life beyond work. But it's really not the case. It is a case where we are the constantly balance between work and other aspects of our life, whether it's personal life or family life. And you can see in this diagram here, just as we learned before, the fulcrum or the focus will focus on where the weight is bigger. When, for example, when a project at work takes up a lot of time, we may have to shift our focus to the work. But when there's a lull period, we may have more time to take care of our own health or take care of our family. So that is work-life balance. But work-life balance has a very bad name. Employers don't like to hear the term work-life balance. So Singapore is the only country that came up with this term called work-life harmony. And if you play in a band or if you play in an orchestra, you will know that the flute will go dee, 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 and you'll hear the trombone goes boom, boom, boom. You'll hear the drums that go boom, boom, boom. And suddenly you'll hear a cymbal that goes chang. But we know that when there's work-life, when there's harmony, it's just like it's work-life harmony. The different aspects of work and life will all come together beautifully. Another term that I like to introduce to you is the term called work-life integration. But it doesn't matter, there's no exam in this particular presentation. It's another term used to describe that it's about exercising control and choice in meeting life challenges, managing work responsibilities alongside personal and family needs. So we have control, we have choice, even if there are challenges. And besides work, we do want to take care of personal as well as family needs. So this is depicted in this picture that shows the three sections. And with the pandemic, it really goes to show that a lot of us have to manage work, the family, and very often we neglect ourselves. And all of you being from HR sector and the business sector, you're familiar with some of the drivers for flexibility. For example, to attract, retain, and engage employees. And we know that this COVID has used flexibility to enable us to continue doing business. So in doing this workshop for many managers in various organizations over the 10 years, I've used a term called Vaccination. because the ability to use flexibility in the business sector is not a one-point instant success. It's a vaccination where you need to ignite the journey. And three parties need to all have the same mindset, which is really the employee, the employer, as well as the economy or the country as a whole, with the support of the government. There has to be a very proactive intent to say that we want to make flexibility work. And also the success of flexibility in the workplace depends on the readiness, and I'll talk about that. But as I said, there's no instant success. It requires constant refinement and constant calibration. So very quickly, I think many of you are familiar with the 4 types of flexible work arrangement. Flexi time, where you can work during different timing of the day beyond what is the normal office hour of 9 to 5. You may be having flexibility in flexi place, where you can choose where you work. Some people have flexi load, where you can work part-time or you can work during seasonal time. And of course, one term that is not commonly used, flexi career. That's when people take breaks in their career and then come back again. So these are the 4 types of flexible work arrangement. And to know more about such information, you can Google TAFEP, T-A-F-E-P, flexible work arrangement. You'll see more details about this definition. We're glad that in Singapore, we are probably the only country in Asia that really have have many strategies to enable our workforce to have flexible work arrangement and to enjoy work-life harmony. So flexible work arrangement is just one of the three pillars of programs and solutions available for work-life harmony. The others are leave benefits like childcare leave and elder care leave. And there are also employee support schemes like having a blue sky day where people can actually leave on time. So on the right-hand side, you will see the flexible work arrangement that may be familiar to you. For example, staggered hours talk about allowing different people to come in and start work or end work at different time. Flexi hours is when you can choose a different timing of when you work. Flexi place, as we described, mostly involve telecommuting. And there's also job sharing, where people can actually have 2 people share one job so that they may have time for other aspects of their life. For example, to pursue a master's degree. And last but not least, one other form of flexible work arrangement is really different creative kind of alternative work schedules. I want to introduce to you this concept called Flexitude. I think we often talk about attitude and aptitude, defining the altitude of how far, how high we can go. But I want to introduce to you this concept, and this was applicable before COVID. But COVID, what we couldn't do in 10 years, took just 1 year to plunge everybody into flexible work arrangement. So when this workshop was first trained, what managers do is they attend a workshop, 4 hours workshop, they have discussions, they do pilot before they actually implement a flexible work arrangement. So you can imagine that due to the COVID situation, we plunged right in. But what is recommended in Flexitude is when we start with any flexible work arrangement, we do suggest that you start very narrow. As you can see from the V, we start at this very narrow point at the bottom, where there's the employees, the operation, the team may not be so ready, and we give very little control to the employee about the flexibility. But as we move on in terms of readiness, then the employee will have more control about the flexibility. And I just want to very quickly show you that an organization may start with very specific and defined flexibility. And once it's agreed to between the manager and the employee, they will just do implement it on a regular basis. But as they go along, when they see that the results are getting better, they could actually increase the flexibility. And ultimately, it will be a framework and guideline where there can be very dynamic, flexible work arrangement that can change anytime. For example, we talk about telecommuting, which we are very familiar with. For an organization that has just started, you may only allow 1 day a week or a fortnight, and it's a predefined telecommuting day. So on those days, bosses will try to minimize team meetings or events so that people don't have to go back to the office. So this has changed during the COVID time. But what has caused is that it went just full-fledged implementation without some of this consideration, without practice, without calibration. But ultimately, as an increase in the flexibility and readiness, we can then allow everyone to choose 1 day where they can telecommute or they have the flexibility and maybe even just inform on the actual day. So many people that have done work from home in the last 20 months or so say it's even more stressful, and it should not be, because lots of money is spent on implementing flexible work arrangement. But if you look at what this example show, a typical day in the past would mean that we spend time getting dressed, getting to traffic jams, getting into crowded trains so that we get to work. And during lunch, we may lunch with our customers or our colleagues. And then we spend time getting back into the jams and the crowded train again, and then we get home. But what has changed is that if we allow the employee to work from home, the employee can actually start the morning with exercise, swimming, jogging, and after that, maybe even have breakfast with the parents or with the kids, and then just go right back into work. During the lunchtime, a few of the lunches may be spent making sandwiches for the kid, and before the person returns to work again. And in the evening, there's no need to be caught in the traffic jam or to be rushing for trains, but just right plunge into personal or family activities. So if someone who is able to enjoy working from home, stick to the column on the left that just continue working for longer hours, what they get at the end is backache because they spend longer time sitting there. There can be bad relationship when the child comes at lunchtime and say, Daddy, can you eat with me? And Daddy say, oh, I'm really busy, I have a meeting. And that will probably hurt the child a little bit. So it's really up to us to make the best of this working from home arrangement. So here's some examples about, in fact, we need to go back to the future where I will encourage all the managers as well as HR leaders as well to relook at what has gone right and what needs to be improved. Another concept that's been often spoken about is really the compressed work week, and we've seen it taking place in some organizations. So here, we normally assume 40 hours work week. An organization may decide to work 4-10, which is 4-day week. That means working longer hours. Of course, that really is measured by KPIs. And some organizations allow employees to just stretch an hour or half hour each day so that there can be 1 day off or half a day off every fortnight. So I want to talk to you about something called the flexible work arrangement readiness. And during the COVID, we really didn't have the luxury, which, as I said, we just plunged right in. But there are 3 aspects of the readiness that we need to consider. And I hope that at the end of this forum this evening, you will re-look at what is the readiness of the operation, the team as well as the employee, and look at what needs to be done. So to me, it's called back to the future. Back to another future where we want to create a place that is suitable for flexible work arrangement. I'm going to share with you a concept called flex style. So why is it that some people, when we read all the articles about people saying that it's great working from home, and then we have people saying that they are stressed and they are really upset, they can't wait to get back to the office, and they're just trying to just destroy all the benefits of working from home. And actually, we are at this point where we run the risk of wasting the entire crisis. We may go back to what we used to do 5 years ago, all right? And for those who have benefited from working from home, the benefits will be gone, and then we will continue this culture where there is really a stress about work-life harmony. So I want to introduce to you 3 flex styles: integrators, separators, and volunteers. And I think you can see from this, it is based on a book called CEO of Me, written by Prof. Cossette. And I suggest that you really look up Prof. Cossette, Ellen Cossette. I was privileged to meet her and to go through this Train the Trainer workshop with her about more than 10 years ago. And you can even take an online survey to find out your flex style. So Ellen Cossette, Kossek, and look for the flex style. So what are flex styles? She defined flex styles as a psychological and physical way in which we manage relationships between our job and personal life. So what matters most is that we feel in control of work and life relationships and having an alignment between personal values for how individuals want to allocate our work-life demands. So very much similar to what we discussed earlier about work-life integration. So let me just introduce to you the people called integrators. They continually blend work and non-work activities throughout the day, over the weekend, whether it's work or non-work time. They have a way in which they blend the temporal, mental, and physical space in their life. So I, for one, I enjoy doing my work while the TV is showing K-dramas, all right? So I enjoy doing that. And I know that you can probably come across colleagues who in the office in the past will suddenly be calling up the daughter or the son and say, Sana, have you done your spelling? I give you spelling now. And then there you go. activities, work, and after that, it say, okay, take a picture now of your answer and WhatsApp to me, and I take a look. And then after that, straight away, she will turn on and say, oh, boss, you need the PowerPoint, right? I'll get it ready for you. So we may have people like that who are just able to integrate, continually blend work and non-work activities throughout the day. So these people actually work very well during COVID period, working from home. Another group of people are really called the separators. These are people who keep work and personal life compartmentalized during the day. So in the past, they have separating tactics. And what they do is the moment they step into the office at 9, they may even switch off the mobile phone used by the family members and personal use and just only use the business phone and will not check the phone. All right. So when they get back, when they leave the office, they will not touch WhatsApp. They will not touch emails. They will not take any call because they want to fully concentrate on what they need to attend to at home, be it housework, be it taking care of children, or just having time with the elderly parents. So these are separators. And you can imagine how hard it has been for these separators during the COVID period, because we have kids that will come disturbing, and I found out that there are many friends who find it very difficult because of different constraints, for example, space, that they just find it so stressed to be talking and working while they're in the family in a home environment. So one tip that I have for this is that if you know that after doing the survey you are a separator, you really need to find ways to solve this. I have a friend who really need to close the door, have young kids, and she'll put a big sign that say daddy at work. But the little toddler will not know what it means by daddy, but at work. So the door will be closed and the child will cry outside. But he needs to separate himself from the family during those times. He'll put his fingers under the door so that the child can touch the fingers and the child will keep quiet. You may even need to make a phone call so that the child can be looking at the parents. So separators need to find a way, if they are working from home and if the company continues to want to tap on flexible work arrangement, whether it's a safe real estate space or whether for business continuity. So one other suggestion is separating the time space, where this individual may have to start earlier, like 7:30 once the children go to school, and so that when the children are back, they have pockets of time with the family while work is already being done for the day. So those are the separators. The last group of people are the volleyers. This group of people can spend a moment of time being a separator, and then they can spend another moment of time being integrator. So here we're talking about people who maybe in the middle of the day become a separator because they really want to go jogging, swimming, and they don't want any interruption. But during the work time, they are fine with the family, the parents coming to ask them what they want to eat. So it is not easy, but there are people who can manage well in both of this kind of work style. And sometimes many of us will find it a challenge, but during the situation, please recognize what is your flex style, and that's why some people work well and some people do not work. So I've spoken about employee readiness, right? With just about 3 minutes more to go. The employee's readiness really depend on, for example, the quality of work that this individual does when they have the flexibility. And the flex style will matter. So I encourage the managers to discuss with your employees one-on-one about how they work, what they prefer to, what kind of work environment they want to have. And we have to be very careful about the fact that in Singapore, we do not have the big houses like in Europe or in US or Australia. We may only have one dining table where we can do the work. So the whole environment is important, the kind of chair you sit on. These are all factors on the employee readiness to be able to utilize flexible work arrangement, and whether, for example, is there suitable childcare at home. Another area that we didn't have time to look into during the COVID time was really the operation readiness. Some operations are really not ready because they do not have the suitable performance measurement. And the measurement of work is done by the eyes, where you look at presentism. How long does one sit in the chair? And how long does one take to be on the computer? So the operation readiness again need to be reviewed. Is a very good time now, knowing that what has gone right, to look at how things can be improved. So in some operation, they are very dependent, interdependent on one another. So the different kind of tools used collaboration tools that we've used over the last will need to be used so that everybody can benefit from such tools. The last area is really team readiness. And this is one major factor why people are thinking that going back to work is better, because they miss the interaction, right? So as long as we think that there is benefit from flexible work arrangement, there are people who become more productive before they work from home, and the business continuity factor, we need to make the team be better prepared for working using flexible work arrangement. For example, we may need to use different kind of team building exercise, or insist that everyone has a virtual lunch or different kind of activities once a week so that we maintain that team spirit. And we must recognize that in that team, we have people who are in different life stage. Some may have to take care of elderly folks, some may have to take care of young children. So with that, the three readiness, whether it's employee, operation, or team, I also want to share with you that there are certain critical success factors. One of it is that there must be very strong management and staff trust. And this has to be either built or earned. The other one that I want to share with you is a term called reciprocal flexibility. If we allow employees to have that flexibility, or if we would like them to have the flexibility, then the employees must have the flexibility on when management requires changes to the established mode of working as well. And there should always be regular review and calibration for the flexible work arrangement. So hopefully with sessions like this, where we hear success story, the organizations will be able to develop flexibility in their culture. Thank you. So I hope by now you are ready to be the change to make work-life harmony work, and we will continue the discussion with Rebecca. Over to you, Rebecca.
Thank you very much, Ian. I have to confess, I am a self-declared integrator. And I truly believe in work-life integration, where I have the freedom to decide when I work and when I am off work. Although my colleagues would say I am more on work than off. So I have a long way to go for being truly work-life harmonized. Okay, thank you. We are now moving on to our panel discussion. A gentle reminder again to post your questions at the chat so that we'll pick it up and post it to our panelists later. Okay. And Ian, please do join us with our two guests at this segment as well. For our panel discussion tonight, we have with us Mr. Daniel Chua and Mr. Ricky Lin. Yeah, all right.
All right.
Instead of me introducing both of them and reading off their very long list of achievements, I think let's hear directly from both of them. Perhaps we can start with you, Daniel. Can give us a little intro, and then we can pass the time to Ricky.
Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks, Ian, for the sharing. So very quick intro. I think we want to leave the time more with the panel discussion and answering some of the Q&A. So I'm Daniel Chia. So currently I'm the deputy chair, supporting Guan Tai for the COP subcommittee. At the same time, I'm also the co-chair for the Comcare and Cultural subcommittee with NUSS. So I think with my career, I was actually very fortunate to have worked with some of the big MNC at Singapore. So I started my career with Asia Pacific Breweries, Heineken. Later part, move on to Nestle for a good 11 years, then subsequently with Carlsberg, and now with Samsung Electronic in a way. So I think the reason why Ian was actually suggesting I should be part of the panelists was actually more of, I could actually share a bit more of my personal encounter and experiences about, how MNC promote, work-life harmony in a way. And I must say, we come a long way, where we first started 15 years ago versus now. I think things has evolved, things has changed quite a fair bit. So later I'll be more than happy to share some of my personal experiences. How did MNC actually drive and embed work-life harmony as part of their culture? Okay. Vicky?
Thanks, Daniel. Also, I'd like to thank NUSS, Rebecca, for inviting me for this panel. I think, to be very honest with you, I think based on what Ian has shared earlier on, it makes me very, very guilty. I mean, as a startup, I guess you know that work-life harmony or work-life balance never existed in our dictionary, right? But this is one key area that we are implementing, to be honest. So a little bit of a background for myself. I'm the founder CEO for Livetree Biotech, and I have been on this mission of revolutionizing our whole food supply system in Singapore while looking at a very sustainable protein through the plants that we can grow here in Singapore itself. So a lot of our work that had started in NUS in the food science lab was a lot of innovation in texturizing protein. So one of the key motivation for this was because I was from the military before, and I was handling the food supply chain in our MINDEF in terms of our critical supplies. So I'm privy to a lot of information that our country is being faced with, or, you know, in other words, it's also our existential threat. So I hope that through some of this technology, we are able to solve our very own problems. So to be honest, my whole career is very straightforward. After graduation from NUS, I went to the military to fulfill my scholarship bond. And then I was in it was another organization that's worse than army. I was in the oil trading for 3 years while saving money for my own startup. And then from there on, it is, you know, no way looking back. All right, it's a one-way ticket onto our journey. So what we are committed to, right, is harnessing our human capital, right? So in our team, we are very careful in some of the definition. I'm not sure in some of your organizations, right? We don't call it human resource. We call it human capital because in our case here as a startup, it's not just the capital, dollar and cents that will move the business, right? How we define a business is whereby, you know, people with idea, with skill sets and the technology, we would then be able to advance our business forward and creating enterprise value. So we see our fellow colleagues, right, as a capital as well, not just the dollar and cents. So with this human capital, what we believe is then to move this whole direction forward, harnessing the very dynamic working relationship. Of course, everybody has to put in their 101%. But like I always tell my team, right, we work hard, we play harder, all right? Of course, at this early stage, sometimes we don't even play at all. Take a break because COVID has really pushed back our timeline. In fact, I'm speaking to you right now in our factory. We are still going to work after this conference. So that shows, you know, what kind of work-life balance we have in a sense, or work-life harmony. So
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I do welcome any questions that people would like to know about a startup or SME in comparison to a big organization, because I've seen, I mean, I'm in this phase, so I've seen through this two extreme end of the polarity. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Daniel, and thanks, Ricky, for the intro and already kicking start our conversation about some of the insights on flexible arrangement and how that applies to you. But for our first formal question, can you share a little bit more about your personal experience? How do you view working from home, and how has the experience so far? And particularly, which flex style are you? Daniel,
Sure.
Ricky, who would like to
Alright.
start first?
So maybe allow me to start first. So maybe let me share a bit of my personal stories. So I remember, you know, when I was a young father, so just now Ian mentioned, right? So I was also once a young father. In fact, I think Ricky now is a young father. So
Bro, you're still very young. Don't worry about it.
So I remember my eldest son, I think he was 2 years old then. So I live a lifestyle whereby morning I need to send my wife and kids, you know, my wife to work, my kids to the childcare. Then I will, you know, drive long distance, you know, from Woodland to Jurong. So that time I was working with Nestle, in a way. So so the factory is actually located at Jurong. So, and you know, childcare, they close at 7 p.m. So, you know, I need to basically leave my workplace by 6 p.m. so that I'm actually on time to fetch my kids. And my kids, I think at the time, he's always the first one to reach the childcare and the last one to leave the childcare, because both husband and wife had to work in a way, right? So I think what really saddened me was then one of the senior management was actually making a remark saying that if Daniel can leave work at 6 p.m., that means he should do more work. I mean, he's not stretching himself. So I mean, when I heard the remark, I was also, quite unhappy about it, and I did in a way confront and try to explain, my own situation. But I think, thank God, everything worked out well, and we managed to reach a midpoint. I can still fulfill my own personal commitment, and at the same time get things done. But I think at the time, I'm also glad that I actually spoke out for myself rather than suffer in silence and say, oh, I think this job is not for me, I should resign, in a way. So a lot of people actually do have this mindset that, oh, top management will never understand. They want you to work long. But if you don't speak up for yourself, then they will never get to know. So let's fast track to now. So that 2-year-old son now, right? So he's 16 years old. So he's taking his O-level. So due to, work from home, so now he's taking O-level. So actually just now, after his A-math paper at 5 p.m., so actually went to the school to fetch him, as a way to motivate him and to also in a way prepare him for next day paper. So I think from working from home, I actually have the flexibility. So I still get my job done, but at the same time, I still able, to have this personal touch to go and fetch him, at the school gate in a way. So that's something, as a father, I really treasure the moment. And whether my son appreciate it or not, I'm not too sure. But I believe he will feel it that, at least he don't need to take the bus back home, take about 30 minutes or so. So at least I'm there to fetch him. So I would say thing has changed a lot, it's evolved a lot. This work from home, I think it also have made, organization, be it your startup, SME or MNC, realize that it can actually works in a way. So in fact, I just have a conversation with my current boss, and he actually make a comment, said, hey, actually, productivity did not affected at all, during this period of, staff is by default working from home. So he said, hey, maybe next year we could also try to, allow more the staff to work from home and give them that kind of understanding and the trust that, working from home is actually an option in a way. So that's very much, a bit of my personal experiences in terms of how work-life harmony has basically started, and I could actually see very positive result. So before I pass on to Ricky, I just want to say, we have to make work-life harmony work. And what's the reason? Because if you read the recent article, we are all talking about the great resignation, the big quit. So in fact, there are some statistics mentioned, more than 40% of us are, in a way looking to quit or resign from the current job in terms of looking out, for better prospect in a way. And actually mental health, mental stress, mental illness is actually one big factor. So as a employer, as a HR, as a business owner, I think we had to acknowledge that, because if we don't take care of the mental health of our staff, they will eventually lose. We will eventually lose all this talent, and the cost of recruitment or retaining talent is actually very high if you're talking about a business perspective in a way. So I'm actually very grateful. Now resources are there, awareness are there, and even workshop or webinar like this are available. So it makes us much more aware. So I'm very hopeful that we'll move on to the next milestone in terms of how do we embed work-life harmony as part of our culture. Yeah.
Thanks, Daniel. Ricky?
Yeah, so for my personal experience during the circuit breaker last year, right? That's where this work from home thing really, I would say, accelerate the pain point to the maximum, because as a young growing company, we do need to come together and be able to interact with one another very closely. So this is one big factor of understanding. As a CEO, as a founder, I need to know the pulse on the ground. So without this work together kind of environment, and I think it's also worsened because a lot of meetings could be scheduled back to back, right? Because it's all online meeting. So during that period, I lost track on some things, whether is it our work progress, whether is it our team's sort of morale, because we were thinking, oh, everybody should rejoice, right? Everyone can work from home, so they don't need to travel around, things like this. But there was also this questions in everybody's head, all right? Especially for me as a leader, whether is everyone able to cope well. So that's why I say this feeling the pulse on the ground was quite a challenge for me. And because it's also having some of the new members in the team, the level of trust has not been well established during that year itself. And of course, not just a circuit breaker, right? From there, we have this, I can't even keep track of all the different schemes in place to manage the risks. So, you know, we basically did not come together to work. And also our office, right, as a co-working space, would not be able to accommodate too many people. In fact, only recently that I have gotten another office space in our NUS itself, right? So I could put another group of my guys in NUS, right? Especially the R&D team to be closer to where the action is. So I could effectively manage the risk of intermingling, right? Compared to, let's say, when everybody could work together. So my marketing team is in one office, my R&D team, you know, is in another office. So then I have, and my production guys is at the factory here taking care of the construction work right now for our factory. So we have to constantly move around, you know. So yeah, I think that's one of the key challenge that I have. If I were to look at maybe some of the bigger corporation, right, based on some of my friends sharing, I would say that it's even harder for them to have that, the pulse on the ground, because you have so many people, right? If you don't see them, how are you able to call each and every one of them up and understand how each of the individuals are doing, or what is their morale at that current level? So I think for this flexible working arrangement, work from home kind of arrangement, the level of trust have to be very strong. Yeah. Okay. So I'm not sure if there's any other question, Rebecca, that you'd like me to cover as well. Yeah.
So I do. Since you have started on the topic of corporations and leaders and all that, and you and your organization being rather unique in your own rights, could you just share a little? You shared about challenges, you shared about trust. What are the other few factors that will be critical for you as a leader and for your company to be really successful in implementing flexible work arrangement and to support your employees in a general mental well-being, as what Daniel has shared as well? Sure.
I think Ian has definitely shared a lot of the details, but let me just share from our implementation phase and our experience. Because one thing, I do have a very good HR person, right, in my team that puts in place and also have certain tools to assist us. So I will start off by sharing that, how we focus on productivity and output, and focus less on the process. So you are more outcome driven. That is definitely the foundation or the bedrock of the success of implementing a flexible working arrangement, FWA for short, right? So I think at the early start, we did not have the right tools. So for example, just to share, we are using Luck, right? So Luck is an enterprise system by ByteDance. This system allows us to have, for example, your WhatsApp, your Google Docs, your Google Calendar, Google Drive, and Zoom, equivalent of a Zoom, their video conference, all integrated into one. And also have one more function, which is called OKR, right? So all the different objective key results that we are looking at will then be measurable based on every individual's contribution over a period of time. So this is how we start to transit into our outcome-based kind of management style, all right? So other measures that can also be put in place, for example, right, could be to have this remote kind of tracking of our progress, right? Rather than to keep asking people on the process, because when you are working together, you can have a certain process in place. You can just walk over to the next desk or the next level of yours to find that someone, your co-workers, right? So I think this is the part that we have to do it virtually. So one of the key way to monitor this progress is also to set very clear work objective, like I said. And how are we able to implement regular check-in sessions, we call that? So using some of these tools will also allow us to speed up that process so that it is not 1:1, but for example, for me or any of the department heads, it's 1:many. Of course, when I'm saying this, I don't have 100 people with me right now. But as a startup, we basically manage a few people under us, okay? So maybe to share another dynamics here is that we have younger workforce with us. So we're talking about the millennials, the Gen Z, okay? This will be a very interesting group, generation of co-workers whereby they are more advanced than you, okay? In anything, whether is it from the tech, IT side of working, to the way that you think your FWA is up to scratch. They will even propose certain arrangement with you. So I think one of the key things for the senior management or the leaders of the department is also to be a bit more open-minded. All right. For us, we are forced by circumstances as a startup. You have no choice, right? You have a young team you have to work with. So we typically would then listen in to what our younger workforce feedback to us, right? And then how is the best way to manage them? In fact, there are a few different permutations altogether. So it's very hard to say for sure what works, because what can be successful for me, right, in my context may not be for you in a bigger organization. So each of us have different stages of growth, okay? But one thing for sure, FWA does appeal to the younger job seekers right now. I'm not sure if you all agree with me, but this is like the default, right? So how are you able to create the environment that they can still grow, right? They can still interact with their peers or the co-workers, but not tying them down? I think that is really how I will share our experience so far.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing. I think this is very insightful and an eye-opener for how a startup would react to the times and the needs of different demographics of the people that you have right now. I actually would like Daniel to come on to share a little from a different perspective, to really contrast the practices of a bigger organization that is an award-winning organization and what they do differently to tackle the same issue here. Daniel?
Well, I think if you just Vicky mentioned about the workforce, right? I mean, what define an MNC is, I think in local context, an organization more than 200, headcount, and I think in simple definition, that means it's a bigger organization. And I think in the bigger organization, the complexity is there are many hierarchy, there are many layers, right? So how do we, take care of everyone? And for my personal experience was actually it take from the top. It take from the top. So let me share with you, a real encounter, a real true story, whereby a region head, a regional CEO, he was actually very interested about, how do we take care of everyone? How do we promote, mental health? And that was actually before COVID. So from the employee engagement survey, I think for MNC, we do all this survey, either every year or every 2 years. And from, the voice of the employee, VOE, we actually heard about, staff felt that they are overworking, there are no clear definition, when they can, stop work, they are working very long hours. So when this leader actually, read about this feedback, and as a HR, we also recommended to him, I think maybe we should. The staff wanted to read something from you. How do we have this work-life harmony or integration? So what he did was actually he wrote an email and sent to everyone within the organization that his philosophy is there should not be any meeting after 6 p.m. in a way. And anyone that really want to have a meeting after 6 p.m. unless it's really urgent, maybe they have to get his permission, to do that. And it make it very difficult that, why should you work or hold a meeting after 6 p.m. And it seems like it's actually working very well. And, employees are looking out to what the leaders are doing. And just now, I think Ian also mentioned about this operational readiness, right? So a lot of time, the old culture, if the boss don't leave the office as a subordinate, I should not leave before my boss. Because my boss, when he walked out, he saw I'm not at my desk. That means I'm not hardworking. And maybe even during my performance review evaluation, I will not get a good score because my boss will not deem me to be very hardworking in a way. So those are very old school kind of judgment in terms of how effective a staff could be. So I think from what I've been through is really it takes from the top in terms of setting the example. And to me, to really make it work is also communication. So maybe one example I'm actually have implemented with this work from home, actually with my HR team. So I do have a sizable HR team. So we actually have this very clear communication, and actually it came from me. I say, let's try, to 12 to 2 p.m. Let's take a good lunch break. We may not eat lunch for 2 hours, but at least take the time to relax, to do something that you like. I mean, if you need to exercise, you need to go and do some baking, by all means do it. And if any point of time you need to do some, marketing, you have some errands to run, just inform and go. So we trust that you will come back, get the works done. And I think to really touch on something which I think Ian mentioned trust, but I think another word to add in is empathy. So I think during this period, empathy is even more important. And it's not about, just being compassion. So empathy is about putting yourself in the shoes of others, like, like what your staff is going through in a way. So as a leader, I think this period, whether you like it or don't like it, I think the element of empathy, if you don't have, I think you need to start to acquire it. If you already have it, then you need to think about how can you magnify the element of empathy. So that's to me what I've observed so far from an MNC. Some leader was very successful in terms of, in a way, implementing work-life harmony. Some actually do struggle because they still could not overcome themselves that, if you are work from home, that means you are skiving around, you are lying on the sofa watching TV. So I think it's still a journey. So some are already, in a way, there. Some are still starting, so to say. So we are all starting on a different level, and that's the reality. No one really know what is work-life harmony, but I think with all the resources available, from the authority, from TAFED, I think in Singapore, we are really in a good place. Yeah, Rebecca.
Thanks for sharing. Thanks. I think you will speak as a true HR leader on empathy and on being be able to feel how the employees are going through. And I also see the contrast between an MNC and the startup. Although different approach, one could be more agile, the other one could be more structured. But I think the common thing that we can see here, the common theme here is leadership. The leaders has to set the tone, and Ricky, yourself being the leader of the organization, you have also set the example as well. So the leadership does play a very important part. I would like to turn the next question and also focus back to our keynote speaker, Ian, also for her to maybe give us a little bit of advice for companies out there. And also maybe if you can take the question that we have posted here on our employees being pretty adaptable, but what about new joiner? Is there any way, any tips that companies and even HR department can do to keep up with the engagement level and providing a good employee experience? So Ian?
Yeah, thanks Eugene for the question. That's really good that you asked this question. It's a major challenge, but I believe that we just need to translate what we normally do if we are in the office. But now we have to find new ways of doing it. For example, if this person was in the office, there will be different people taking him or her out for lunch. So we may need to tell the whole department that we're going to do the same, but you may need to schedule, they may need to try and schedule every week a virtual lunch, and the company can order the food for the two individuals. And having a buddy system would be very key. So frankly, if you ask me, there's no difference. When I started flexible work arrangement, I was very privileged. I was working for HP. 26 years ago, I started flexible work arrangement. I was the only one. We left Singapore. We went to Hong Kong. I was in the AP office. I was the only headcount from our team in the Asia Pacific office. So from there, I had to implement solutions that's for the entire region. from New Zealand to Korea, to to China and all. So everyone is virtual. I don't see anybody. And to be on board, but even at this moment, 26 years later, the boss who actually hired me, I just shared last week at the HP Alumni Association meeting that she really gave me the good start to flexible arrangement. I knew how to manage it. There are times we have to answer, as you know, in a multinational, I have to answer calls according to the US time, the Europe time, and all. But I was available to spend time with my children. Was newborn and 4-year-old. So I think when we talk about somebody, we do need a little bit extra effort if it's a new employee, because you don't see the person. So the extra touch has to be there. So one-on-one is something I suggest if you are the boss, to have at least regularly once a week, whether you can only tahan 15 minutes. It's a new skill to practice how to have a chat with somebody for 15 minutes. All right, very casual chat, just caring about the person, the empathy, giving the warm welcome. Because if we had done it in the office, we'll say, let's come for a cup of coffee and let's have a chat. But now we can still do the same, have a cup of coffee and do that. So, so that's my advice. You have to do that, whether you group in the team to each and also take turn. But one thing that's missing is that do not underestimate the value of team building, even if it's virtual. I've seen companies who have done meetings that before they have their weekly meeting or monthly meeting, they have everyone for 15 minutes share something you learn, or Google something that you can share with everybody. Everybody has a good laugh, or even do a performance. So what we did in on-site, we now have to change, because we no longer can go around and say, hey, you want this kueh or not? You want this curry puff? No, we can't do that anymore and start talking about the curry puff. We have to be creative in creating the warmth and the empathy for one another. I think for what Ricky has shared, a startup definitely you have this dynamic. That's why I started the chart saying the multi-generational workforce. All right. I used to have someone that likes to go party at night, and then she will wake up only at 10:30 and she comes into work. But the rest of the staff are waiting for her for all the information. And then she said, no, I'm very sleepy, so I want to come in at 10:30, but that night she works all alone till 11 o'clock. And we are in this office where there's a long, quiet corridor. And this lady, for me, I'm very concerned about safety. All right, then the next day she might tell me, I can't get this information because the guys are not around and I didn't want to disturb them after 9 o'clock. So while we can say that we all want to choose what suits our time, there are 3 wins. Number 1 win is the organization, the business must thrive. If the business go bust, no one has any job. All right. So the win of the business, the win of the manager, and the win of the employee. And that's why I call it win-win-win. We must find a point where you work. And if somebody really, just doesn't want to work, it really affected our work. So while we say that we cater to the needs, and I think, Ricky, you mentioned one very clear point. I did my master last year, and it's scary how the younger people, I was 57, the younger people, the way they use collaboration tools, I have never heard of them. And the speed in which they use all these tools is frightening, but that's where we can harness, what they do, the speed that they do. We can use them and we can learn from one another. And this really suits well for this whole COVID situation, where we need to learn new ways of working. So when someone says it's the new norm, I just heard a new term, it's a new difference. We first have to recognize what is the new difference. Then we can make it a new norm. If we do not recognize what's the new difference and we still remain, so we kind of think that we are operational ready, team ready, individual ready, but we are not. So I really will be very sad, as Danny and I work in the Alliance for Action on Work-Life Harmony. We did quite a bit of work, and that's how we got to know one another. We even have a role play showing after hours communication, but today we don't have time to show you. There are lots of things that we need to go back to the basics, so that we need to recognize what is different, and only when we know the difference, then we can establish what is our common goal. Yeah. So I hope that resonates with the panel.
Sure. If I may share a bit of my views to answer also Mr. Eugene Yeo's question about new joiners. So I just want to give tips. When you do exit interview, in fact, statistics shown 10% of the leavers left the organization when they do not have, a proper onboarding program. So during this pandemic or COVID situation, we can't do physical onboarding. So that's something organizations should not discount it. So please do continue to do this virtual onboarding. So at least the new joiners, at least they're able to understand the overall organization structure and have different speaker itself, to conduct the onboarding so that they have a good understanding what is the whole organization, be it culture, system, processes. I think those are very essential. And I just also want to echo the buddy system. So in fact, I've also restarted this buddy system within my current organization. And in fact, I also wrote a job description of, who can be a buddy. And a buddy not necessarily must be the line manager, the HOD. It can be, anyone that have, that's keen to share, to take care of the new joiners or maybe a bit longer with the organization. So I think that is also important because as a line manager, we are also aware we cannot be engaging the staff, 24/7. And maybe sometimes the new joiners may not feel so comfortable, working directly or asking the line manager simple question, which they may think, oh, it's too simple. So maybe my line manager may not think very highly of me if I ask such a question. I mean, you cannot dispute. So I think as a buddy, so they are more of the same level. So the level of trust or understanding is there. And you also make the new joiners a bit more settled down, a bit more welcome. So those are a few tips maybe Eugene can consider.
Thank you. Thanks for
Rebecca,
chipping
can I
in.
just add one
Oh, yes.
statement? I will encourage every startup to make flexible work arrangement work because that is key for expansion. We know that the market is not in Singapore. And in order to reach that level, you need to be able to work with people that you don't see in your office. So, this is like a really safe ground, protected ground, small scale to make it work. Whether you want to come up with performance measurement systems, you want to come up with KPI, you want to have team building kind of activities that will build the culture. This is the time. This is the time where you can practice it, hone it, so that you are ready to take off when you expand overseas. Just one example, after about 20 years in IBM, HP, which are multinational, the most admired companies according to Fortune listing, I made a conscious choice to join my friend's startup. At that time, you don't call it startup, you just call it small, medium enterprise. We had about 200 then to 400 people. One of the things that I learned was to have what I call skip level meeting, because you really need to have the staff connect with the leadership. So we actually organize session where they get to talk to the CEO or the general manager. And I encourage you to do the same, where they really have a direct line. And I think the young people like that. And anyone, even for Eugene, your new employees, don't do a recorded video, where the CEO record a video. Even if it's 15 minutes during a 1 hour session, I think it adds a lot more weight than a recorded message from the CEO or whoever is a senior manager that this new employee normally won't get to meet. So we do need to find new ways. And Ricky, I think if you are able to work with this various generation, don't forget the old people, because they come with a wealth of experience and they're willing to stay with you. All right, their network. So I need to really plug for this, because the older people over 50 are finding it so hard to find work. And what I can see is that they have tremendous experience, they have tremendous network. They do not need to, frankly, think of other things about their life because they kind of settle it. So they can really work for you, but don't make them work 24 hours because they don't want this at this point in life.
Yeah, if I can just chime in right there. It is true, Ian, because I do have a very senior leader with me. I mean, he's already past his retiree age. He's a retiree, past retiring. And yeah, he said for the first time, and he was a senior person. He was the MD of one of the largest FMCG company, in Singapore. We introduced so much tech to him. He realized, he said, one day he just tell me, "Wow, I can't catch up with you guys, right? So much thing. Last time I just turn to my PA, my secretary, can do all the minute taking, all the coordination work and booking of the meeting, events, whatever. But now everything is I would say you have to look at the icon there. You can go in and you book the calendar so that we can have a meeting and everybody can see my availability and things like this. So indeed it's true. There's a gestational period for some of the senior or matured co-workers. But I think what still stands is that that common understanding, all right, of how what is the environment that we want to work in and the culture, the communication style. So that will form the bedrock. I mean, whether is it meeting in person or via a tool, right? Whether is it Zoom, like what we are using now, or any other software, it is just a tool, right? But the kind of sincerity that you want to engage your co-workers, whether you are the leader, you want to engage your line workers, your line managers and things like that, that should not change, yeah. I think one thing is also to share, for example, you know, we do have that intent of making every month, right, a compulsory lunch with CEO. Okay, so whether is it virtual or whether is it in real person, right, so that we can understand what, like I think just now you all mentioned, right, have that empathy, knows someone, right, even it can be as short as 15 minutes or half an hour, right, for lunch. I think that's critical, no doubt about that, because after all we are still human, right? So where's the connection if we don't meet in, I mean, have that kind of conversation or dialogue, right? Otherwise that human connection will not be established. Yeah. So
Ricky, I challenge you to allow glimpses of your personal interests and life to your people, maybe through a close community group in Facebook, social media group or something, so that they get to see you. Because if they're in the office, they'll see your photos and all, right? But here we have to find new ways in which we engage the younger generation and the older generation too. I think talking about older people, a couple of weeks ago on International Day of Older People, I was in a room of Zoom with like 50 people that were all 70 and above. And I'm just amazed at how they can use Zoom and what they have learned. So I think it's just that willingness to want to embrace new things, and it is possible.
Yes, agree with you. And just to add on to Eugene's question here about new joiners. So recently I got a BD lady, you know, that joined us. To be very honest with you, I was quite reluctant to just conduct every of the, I mean, yeah, she went through induction, but you know, to meet me and to understand from a top-down approach, right, what we are trying to do is important. So I still say, yeah, it's better that we just meet up in person, right? Because the warmth of that, or maybe the enthusiasm, right, of communication, you cannot be feel, you can't feel it completely, right? It cannot be replaced. So I would just say that if you can spare that opportunity, just meet up with a person at least once. Then after that, of course, the rest of the work can be done virtually, right? In terms of engagement and discussion. But for a new joiner, because I put myself in her shoe, right? It's like, okay, I can't even see everyone. And all I see is that screen. I don't feel, right? So I made it a point to just get her to meet up with me one-to-one, yeah. So this is just a little nuggets from my side.
Thank you. Thanks for the sharing from the perspective of a CEO and to allow people to have lunch with you every so often. I would like to move on to a Q&A session, and we do have one question being posted in the chat. And if any of you would like to ask the questions to our panelists in person, do turn on your camera and then post the question. But first, let the panelists take the question from Joanne first. The question is, how do you strike a balance on the thinking and sentiments between blue collar, who are very operationally linked to on-site job scope, where most companies will find it difficult to allow them to work flexible work arrangements, versus white collar, where flexible work hours are possible? Shall we hear from Daniel? I'm not sure whether...
I can share some of the tips. This is a very general question. This happens all the time, and that's why we talk about operational readiness. Not all operations are suitable for flexible work arrangement, but really depending on, and it's not just blue or white. There are jobs that have to be done on site. If you're a doctor, you can still direct a robot to do an operation, but you still have to be on site. But what we're seeing is that there's now telemedicine, where you can do consult in kind of remotely. So flexibility, as I mentioned, come in different forms: the place, the time, the load. So for example, if this worker who needs to do the work on site, say that every Wednesday morning, I want to send my mom for physiotherapy, then we can work out a flexibility where maybe the work can be done longer on some days if it's not really that, or there can be kind of like staggered hours, right? So that on that morning, the person can really take the time off totally. All right, and that's where we talk about the variation. So it really depends on that flexibility. And we talk about flexi load. If it's the case where it's after a major illness that the person really needs every morning, Wednesday morning, to take the parent for physiotherapy, and the work cannot be done by extending 1 hour on the other 4 days, then maybe we have to discuss that in that case, either you have to take no pay leave or you have to adjust. So as I mentioned, operation frankly always comes first, because if the customer leaves, we are not going to survive as a business. But we may find ways, and we might find somebody that is willing to come in and work that half morning if this is going to be a longer term arrangement. So that's where the flexibility comes in. We need to understand the need and then look at the different kind of flexibility. It is not just one way. I hope that answers Joanne's, is it? Joanne, if that doesn't answer, you want to turn on your camera and ask us a little bit more about what you have just heard? Okay.
Joanne?
Can you see me?
No, it's all right. I can hear. We can hear Joanne. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Basically, we have it's a real situation where mainly the blue collars are having that not so, I wouldn't say negative sentiment, but it's like a not very good vibe, knowing that their company is going towards the direction which we are to implement this flex work. So they are looking at it in terms of compensation to say that, okay, if the white collars are able to go with flexible hours, that they can spend more time away from the office to do work, while they cannot, they want to have some form of monetary kind of take away, you know. That is the way how, and in our company, most of the workers are really foreign workers. Very few Singaporeans. So they are more like, you know, there's this several clans having that type of discussion. And majority of them are actually coming from nearby across the border and not very far at from China. So we always come to this kind of a sandwich situation. Yeah, we were just discussing it until today. We still have not come to a conclusion, actually. We just launched this, in fact, just 3 days ago, the flex work kind of program.
So generally, as I said, that's why we shared with organization that it depends on the operation as well as the team.
Yeah,
so
but then, yeah, understand. Yeah,
that.
so that's why we know about this operations readiness, but it's something which for us at the start, you know, how do we then set the right pace to when we start introducing this? It's always the beginning, the starting point that is toughest.
I think for organizations who are very clear about the fact that not all jobs are suitable, certain jobs, but you are most welcome to pick up the skills so that you can move into those jobs. So that is one of the way. I will tell you, for example, you know, those operations that 24/7, is people are saying, you know, I don't like the hours, you know, I have to work night shift and all this, you know, why must I work night shift and so on. So one of the creative solutions that this industry came up with is that they actually hire people that only work weekdays, and then they hire people to, so this is about like 50% of the workforce only want to work weekdays, normal hours. Then they have to solve the other 50% of problem, that find people that are willing to work the different shifts. And these people who work different shifts may get additional allowance because they are willing to work beyond the normal shift. So I don't think there's an easy answer, you know, in your case. And but really, the organization need to be very clear that they are fair. It is the nature of the job, and you are welcome to pick up the skills so that you can move into those jobs. But our priority is that this is the different phases. When we find a solution, we will do that. I know that people will ask for money, but I don't think it's a way to solve it. Yeah, because it is really dependent on the nature of the job. I don't know whether, I mean, the rest of the panelists, even Rebecca, maybe you want to add something to that.
I actually have I had the same conversation with a manager where I gave the exact same advice that the job scope and the expectation needs to be met after exploring all kinds of options, be it job sharing, part-time arrangement, and if nothing else fails, the job still needs to be done. So that's one of the bottom line as well. It's a hard truth, but I do believe that with a lot of empathy and a willingness, flexibility on both sides, things can work. But if everything else fails, the job still needs to be done. So that's the thing. But maybe more insights from Daniel and Ricky also on this topic, so that we can give more to advice to Joanne.
Yep.
Yeah. Maybe
So
I can.
Yeah, Ricky, please.
Oh, Daniel first.
Yeah. No, I just want to add on. I think there's always a definition, essential, non-essential, who can work from home, who has to be on site itself. So I think from the job description from the start, when you sign up for a role, I think that has to be made clear, right? But I think I like the way Ian mentioned. So if you feel you do not want to be entrapped in such a role, then I think a way whereby, you can have this skill future, to take on a new skill set, so that you can actually move on to the next level, whereby maybe flexible work arrangement will be more applicable for you. But I think the hard truth is people compare, right? You work from home, I need to be in the office. And since I am actually exposing myself to a potential risk, etc. And as a top management, I think that's where the softer approach may need to come in, like be it, a quick site visit to send your concern to them, to show that you care. And in fact, if you've been on social media, a lot of organizations actually give this care pack, So in fact, I also don't like the idea that we are comparing who give a better care pack in a way. But I think the bottom line is you actually show that you care for your staff in a way. So I think as a management, Joanne, I think you can actually consider, doing, some such a softer approach, whereby I think by default, due to the nature of your role, you need to be in the office on site. But I think on the softer approach, what can the management do to basically cushion, that kind of negative sentiment, which I think you wrote in your question. So that's very much my personal opinion. Yeah.
Thanks, Daniel. Ricky?
Yeah, for us, we are going to kickstart our production very soon. So this is definitely one of the things that went through our mind, our discussion, right, on recruitment, and how are we able to give, or implement such FWA amongst the blue collar or more of a on-site technical role, right? So honestly, if I may say this again, maybe Joanne, you can give us the context of that blue collar job, yeah? But if, let's say I just put in a very simple term, a worker that needs to go onto the production line or needs to do the physical manual work, right? The person can't just say that, I want to come in later, but I work, also I can knock off later. So the whole production schedule will change accordingly. I don't think so. We have to respect, of course, production schedule. And that's why certain structures are in place for that purpose, right? Of course, everybody aspires not to do the laborious technical work, right? Everybody wants to go into the more of a management role, right? That's why typically they say, oh, sit in the office, enjoy the aircon. But I think give your organization and the affected personnel a chance to experience also what the white collar, team or the colleagues go through, So maybe then they can also understand that the grass is not always greener on the other side, right? But if let's say this is not an option, because if some of them are from neighboring countries, they travel here, they know this is the job they are getting into. Then the question here is that, do you have backup plan? I mean, one of the solutions for us is I can have a full-time staff. I also have part-time staff, right? Part-time staff can come in as an ad hoc team to reinforce some of the full-time staff, so that okay, for example, right, I need to do packing work, okay, for my plant-based meat. So I cannot expect that the person day in, day out, right, 20 days a month, do the same job. So either there's some form of job rotation, there could be some day when 1 day on, 1 day off, or 2 day on, 1 day off, things like this. right? This is where we are considering the different structure in place, right? Of course, does it affect the productivity? Answer is yes, because you get a full-time staff to do a piece of work, right? Even if the person need to tighten a bolt and a nut, for example, you get a part-timer come in, they may not be as proficient, but if that is what that worker of yours require, to give them some flexibility, some breather, room to breathe, to relax, I say why not? What you do not want is eventually all your blue collar go to the next door competitor of yours just because there's a $50 pay increase, right? And I think that's what Daniel mentioned earlier on. How do you really show that you care for that guy on the ground? Sometimes it's not really about pay. Sometimes they just want a bit of flexibility, then just give it to the person, right? If you want to keep that person for long term. So I'm not sure, Joanne, if that is the context you are in,
Thank you. Thanks for the very practical advice. I'm conscious of time that we may overrun a little, and we do have a question for Wilson, which I think is also important for the panelists to be able to address. So for those who are able to stay a bit more for another 3 to 5 minutes, we will try to address Wilson's question. And Ian, thanks for taking that question. It is about performance appraisal for new employees.
All right. So I think whether you're a new joiner or you just changed department or your boss is new, you will always have new relationships. So this applies in all the situations, whether it's COVID or not. And if you are in organizations where KPI are very clear, then that's great. But if not, you may want to start deciding what your own KPI that you can communicate with your boss, right? So I had teams that are operating remotely in customer location. So it's very hard to build bonds and to build to know what they're doing. But we do talk about what I call again one-on-one, where we have a chat as to what's happening, how things are, and we do have things like weekly report. And I had a boss who I don't see at all. All right. So every week, actually, I don't encourage you purposely 12 midnight send email to show your boss that you're working hard at 12 midnight. But actually, your boss sleeping, then the beep goes and then that work against you. But what I did was that every week I will write a quick email and say, well, this week our major highlights of the week are this, and next week I'll plan to do, our focus will be on these areas. So that helped me maintain that kind of visibility with my boss, very short notes. So you will have to find your own ways in which you build that relationship with the boss, and you need to constantly gauge. And I say that once you perfect this, you are ready to move to any new department, be promoted and have new bosses, go to any country and work or have new subordinates. So work on it and make sure that you can do this, to really build quick and trusting relationship with people that you work with.
Thank you, Ian. Any quick words to add from Daniel and Ricky on this question?
So maybe for me, to also echo what Ian has shared, is actually more about goal setting. So I think during this virtual, work from home kind of setting, I think the goal setting part is even more important, especially for new joiners, because you need to be so-called being assessed. So what my current organization is actually, they'll be doing the first month itself, the line manager together HR, we will actually sit down and basically, firm up what would be the goals, the target that this new joiner will be assessed upon. Then there will be frequent check-in, during the first month, third month, depending on how long is the probation. And I think with this very fair and systematic way of assessment, I think be it performance appraisal evaluation is actually the same for everyone. So at the end of the year, when we do the performance evaluation, to us, I think it's about the fairness. So I think with this fairness in place, system in place, actually there will be very little dispute, so to say. Yeah.
Thanks, Daniel. All right. Thank you so much. I'm also conscious that we have overrun our session. For those of you who would like to ask our panelists more questions, do connect with them on the LinkedIn. They are definitely be able to answer more. I'll be very happy to connect with you personally as well. And for the HR folks out there, do join us at the NUSS HR Community of Practice. We do have a very active small group of people who will really like to debate on some of these key issues and challenges that our companies are facing at this point. So we'll now come to the end of the session. Thank you so much for participating. Really like to thank Kwantai, Ian, Daniel, and Ricky for speaking so passionately tonight, and also for the NUSS Secretariat team working at the back end to make this event possible. Our next event from the HR Community of Practice is on the 9th of November, a workshop on understanding Singapore government grants for SMEs. So do look out for registration details in your inbox or at the NUSS website. Till next time, have a good evening, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.